Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank the Prime Minister for advance sight of his statement. His reputation is at stake. Everyone is watching. It is finally time for the truth. Earlier today, Mr. Speaker, Downing Street admitted that the Prime Minister inadvertently misled the House. The Prime Minister has chosen not to repeat that from the dispatch box. I will remind him that under the Ministerial Code, he has a duty to correct the record at the earliest opportunity.
Before we continue, do us a little favour by subscribing to the channel, because over 98% of you watching haven't subscribed. It costs you nothing, not even a penny, to join this channel. Have you subscribed? Thanks so much.
On the 4th of February 2026, the Prime Minister, fifth question, Mr. Speaker, on the 4th of February 2026, the Prime Minister told me from the dispatch box that the security vetting he had received had revealed Mandelson's relationship with Epstein. How could he say that if he had not seen the security vetting? And finally, Mr. Speaker, Sistema is a Russian defense company closely linked to the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin's war machine. Was the Prime Minister aware, before the appointment, that Peter Mandelson had remained a director of that company long after Russia's invasion of Crimea? Mr. Speaker, everyone makes mistakes. It is how you face up to those mistakes that shows the character of a leader. Instead of taking responsibility for the decisions he made, the Prime Minister has thrown his staff and his officials under the bus. This is a man who once said, "I will carry the can for the mistakes of any organisation I lead." Instead, he has sacked his cabinet secretary. He has sacked his director of communications. He has sacked his chief of staff. And he has now sacked the permanent secretary of the Foreign Office. All of these people fired for a decision he made. The Right Honourable Gentleman's defence is that he, a former director of public prosecutions, is so lacking in curiosity that he chose to ask no questions about the vetting process. He asked no questions about Mandelson's relationship with Epstein. He asked no questions about the security risk Mandelson posed. Apparently, he didn't even speak to Peter Mandelson before his appointment. It doesn't appear that he asked any questions at all. Why? Because he didn't want to know. He had taken the risk. He had chosen his man. Whitehall had to follow. It is the duty of the Prime Minister to ensure he is telling the truth. Or does the Ministerial Code not apply to him? I'm only holding the Prime Minister to the same standard to which he held others. On the 26th of January 2022, the Right Honourable Gentleman said to a previous Prime Minister at this dispatch box, if he misled the House, he must resign. Does he stand by those words, or is there one rule for him and another for everyone else?
She also asks why Peter Mandelson failed. Mr. Speaker, it's important to make a distinction between the information provided to the review and the recommendation. The information in the review must be protected and has been protected, because otherwise the integrity of the entire system would fall away. But the recommendation doesn't need to be protected and should not have been protected. Mr. Speaker, in relation to her questions, in relation to the answer about full due process, that was the information that I had, that I put before the House, and it was confirmed to be by Sir Chris Wormold, because in September I asked him to conduct a review of the process to assure me that the process was correctly carried out. He did that and wrote to me on the 16th of September, giving me that his conclusions. In relation, Mr. Speaker, to reports in the media, Number 10 was repeatedly asked about the facts surrounding Peter Mandelson's clearance and was assured that the proper process was followed in that case. Mr. Speaker, in relation to those in Number 10, let me give the answer. Nobody in Number 10 was informed about UKSV's recommendation. Mr. Speaker, just to be clear and for the record, the Cabinet Office Permanent Secretary did receive information recently and then sought the necessary and legal advice. Once those checks were completed by the Cabinet Office Permanent Secretary, I was told That is in the last 2 weeks or so. That was entirely the right procedure, to get the legal advice and then to bring it to my attention at the first opportunity. It was the right procedure that was followed by my officials in the last few weeks. Mr. Speaker, in relation to why I was furious about the process, for the very reason, Mr. Speaker, I strongly believe I should have been given this information at the very outset. I strongly believe there were repeated times when I should have been told. I should have been told on appointment. I should have been told when Peter Mandelson was sacked. The Cabinet Secretary should have been told when he reviewed the process. The Foreign Secretary should have been told before she was asked to sign a statement to the Select Committee. And I should have been told when I ordered a review of vetting, Mr. Speaker. In relation to the point she makes about what I said in February in answer to a question of hers, I make it very clear, Mr. Speaker, I had not seen the security vetting file. I did not know that UK SV... The question asked me about vetting. I knew about the due diligence, and that's why I put before the House what I knew about the due diligence in relation to...
Keir Starmer stood there, trying to keep it together, trying to look composed. But the moment the questioning began, you could see it. The hesitation, the stutter, the slight pause before each answer, like he was buying himself time. And across from him, the leader of the opposition, sharp, direct, completely locked in, wasn't there to play games. She opened politely, sure, thanking him for the statement, all proper and formal like you'd expect in Parliament. But that politeness didn't last long. Straight away, she made it clear his reputation is on the line, everyone is watching, and it's time for the truth. And not later, not after another review. Now. Because earlier that same day, Downing Street had quietly admitted something serious, that the Prime Minister had misled the House. Not deliberately, they said. Inadvertently. But in Westminster, that word doesn't soften the blow. Misleading Parliament is misleading Parliament. And what made it worse? He stood there in the Commons and didn't even repeat that admission himself. That's when the pressure really started building. She reminded him of the ministerial code, that duty to correct the record at the earliest opportunity, not when it's convenient, not after the headlines die down, immediately. And that's where the timeline started to unravel. He claimed he only found out days ago about the failed security vetting of Peter Mandelson. But if that's true, why didn't he correct the record the moment he knew? Why wait? Why let it sit? And then she laid it out, piece by piece, like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. We know he personally appointed Mandelson to one of the most sensitive diplomatic roles, ambassador to the United States. Not a small job, not a quiet posting. This is top-tier, high-stakes, intelligence-level access. And yet, despite that, the vetting wasn't even complete when the appointment was made. That alone had MPS shifting in their seats. Then came the deeper concerns, links, associations, questions about judgment, the kind of things that in any normal process would trigger serious scrutiny before anyone even got near that level of responsibility. And still, the appointment went ahead. That's what made this feel less like a mistake and more like a gamble. She didn't rush it either. She slowed it down, made every point land, reminded the House that Mandelson wasn't just some unknown figure. He was a seasoned politician, someone who had already been removed from government positions before. That should have meant tighter checks, not looser ones, more scrutiny, not less, yet somehow the opposite happened. And then the question that really cut through, if he failed vetting, how on earth was he allowed to continue with access to sensitive information? That's not just a political issue anymore. That's national security. That's the kind of thing that goes way beyond party lines. By this point, you could see it on Starmer's face. He was trying to stay steady, trying to keep the answers controlled, but the rhythm wasn't there. And every response felt like it was chasing the question instead of answering it. He talked about processes, reviews, internal procedures, all the usual language, but it didn't quite connect. Then she flipped it again, moving from what we know to what we don't know. And that list was even worse. We still don't know exactly why Mandelson failed vetting. We don't know what risks were actually posed. We don't know how the Prime Minister could go on television and repeat claims that turned out not to be accurate, without anyone stepping in to correct him. Not one advisor, not one official. That silence, that's what made it feel even more off. At that point, it wasn't just about facts anymore. It was about credibility, because every explanation seemed to create more confusion instead of clearing things up. But the story wasn't tightening and it was getting messier. Then came the moment that really locked the chamber in. She said there were too many questions to ask in the time allowed, so she narrowed it down to 6. 6 clear questions, and she'd already given them to him in advance. No surprises, no excuses. He had them right there in front of him. That's when it stopped being a debate and started feeling like a test. Did he mislead the House when he said due process was followed? Why didn't number 10 deny early reports about the failed vetting? Would he repeat his claim that no one knew about the failure until recently? Why was he furious about a process that officials say was standard? How could he reference vetting details he hadn't even seen? And finally, was he aware of Mandelson's connections to a company linked to Russian defence interests? When Starmer stood up to answer, this was his chance to take control, to steady things. But instead, it felt like he was trying to piece things together as he spoke. He said he only found out recently that he wanted answers before coming to the House, that he relied on the information given to him, that he hadn't seen the vetting file. And look, on paper, those answers sound reasonable. But in that moment, under that pressure, it didn't land cleanly, because every answer raised the same quiet question hanging in the air. Why didn't you know? He insisted that the process should have informed him earlier, that there were multiple points where he should have been told, that the system failed to pass on critical information. And that's where things started to feel uncomfortable for him, because the more he leaned on the system failing, the more it sounded like he was stepping away from responsibility. So the question became obvious. If everyone else is being held accountable, what about the man at the top? So now the question wasn't coming from the opposition anymore. It was coming from his own past. Does that rule still apply? Or is there one rule for him and another for everyone else? And just like that, the whole room went still again. Because that's not something you can dodge with process talk or internal reviews. That's about principle, about consistency, about whether the standards you demand from others are the same ones you live by when the pressure's on you. And that's where this whole situation sits right now. Not fully resolved, not fully explained. Still hanging there with questions that haven't been cleanly answered, and a story that keeps shifting depending on who's speaking. People outside Westminster are watching this play out thinking the same thing. If something this serious can slip through at the highest level, what does that say about the system, about oversight, about leadership? Because for everyday people, accountability is simple. You make a decision, you stand by it. You get it wrong, you own it. No layers, no delays. But here it feels different, slower, more complicated, like responsibility gets passed around until it lands nowhere. And that's why this moment matters more than just one appointment or one statement. It's about trust, whether the people running the country are held to the same standard as everyone else. So now it's over to you. Was this a genuine breakdown in communication or something deeper? Should the Prime Minister be given time to fix it, or has that moment already passed? And most importantly, do you believe there really is one rule for them and another for everyone else? Drop your thoughts below. Get involved in the debate. And if you want more breakdowns like this, raw, straight, no fluff, make sure you like, share and subscribe.